We're going. We're good.
Great. Morning, everybody. Sorry I'm late. I'm Kathy Lynch. I am an attorney and also an adjunct professor and your teacher's running partner. And she asked me to come in and talk to you guys today concerning stuff that you have been learning in your paper about the criminal justice system in terms of the degree of social unrest that all of the recent police violence perhaps has created, or maybe it's always something that's been underneath the surface and we're just sort of experiencing now. But I want to ask a question to everybody in class, and I want a show of hands, okay? How many people here have committed a crime? Really, that's it? How many people here drive? None of you people who drive it, and raise your hand. You never go on a mile or two above the speed limit, right? No, not you. Never. And I know you all are in high school, and I really don't, consider this to be a proper activity, but I'm sure none of you have ever had an alcoholic beverage before. I am sure that none of you have ever crossed the street outside of the white delineated crosswalk. I'm sure that none of you have ever walked down the street in the city of White Plains and spit on the ground. So let me ask again for a show of hands. How many people here have committed a crime?
Okay, so.
Oh, come on. Every single person better raise their hand. We commit crime every single day. How many people here have ever put money into a soda machine and gotten the product and the money back?
Oh, I have.
Okay, so every single person here better raise their hand about who's committed a crime, because people do it every single day. Do you consider yourself criminals? No. So let me see who's got a bag. So I go to the Coke machine and I put my $2 in and I get a Diet Coke and my $2 back. What do? I say score, right? And I'm like, oh, today's my lucky day. But, okay, and nobody would look at me and say, oh, Kathy's a criminal. But let's say I saw $2 sticking out of her bag and went like this and took the $2 and put it into my pocket. What would you think then? What's the difference? One's intentional. What happens if it just happened to fall out? But I knew it was hers.
You have control of the machine gave it back to you. You can't put it back in the machine so you can't get it.
But it's still not my money. What you're supposed to do, by the way, is there's a telephone number and address there. You're supposed to call and send the money back. By the way.
Yeah, okay.
But how is it that society determines, all right, look, walking outside of the delineated crosswalk, about perhaps spitting on the sidewalk, perhaps throwing our garbage in some place that's not exactly a trash can receptacle, about driving over the speed limit, about not wearing our seatbelt when we're in the car. As a society, do we consider those the same level of crime as we would give to somebody who, robbed money out of somebody's purse? We say some crimes are more significant than others, right? Now, why is that? How does a society sort of make that determination? Anybody have an idea?
Most of the things that, for example, like crossing the street outside of the lines, like that don't only affect you, they don't really affect anyone else. Like crossing the street 2 feet out isn't really going to affect if all the cars are stopped. It's basically you're just putting your whole life at risk. Whereas, like stealing her money affects her life and impacts other people.
Perhaps, but what if you were the driver and I was the one who was outside the 2 feet of the crosswalk and you hit me? It would affect you as well, because maybe you were going a mile over the speed limit and you shouldn't have been. And the argument could be made from my family, well, if she was traveling within the speed limit, she would have seen Kathy and wouldn't have crushed her with her automobile. But it is, there are many, many factors that go into how a society views crime. And the one big thing that I'm going to tell you about is that it's a matter of discretion. Does everybody know what discretion is? What's discretion? Anybody want to give me a definition of discretion? Do I have to give you a definition of discretion? I guess I do. Discretion, I guess I would define in terms of the criminal justice system is using your experiences and your judgment to make a decision, okay? It's your discretion in the morning to get up and say, today I'm wearing my Lynch jersey because it was a really good game last night. Today it's your discretion to say, I'm wearing flip-flops because I don't feel like wearing shoes. It's your discretion when you go to the cafeteria today and decide what you're going to eat, right? It's your discretion who you're going to talk to, what you're going to do, the things that you do amongst a given day, that's based upon your discretion in large part, right? Some things you have to do some things, like I'm sure nobody here, would choose to be anyplace else, right? This class is great. I'm sure nobody else would have anything else to do other than go to school on a regular basis, right? Because, school is just school, but certain things you have to do, other things you choose to do, right? So why is it that police officers only arrest some people and don't arrest other people? It's based upon discretion. A police officer cannot possibly, imagine if you were a police officer, patrol officer in the city of New York. You couldn't possibly arrest every single person committing every single crime that you saw because you'd be arresting people 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, right? Imagine, think about when you're in the city, okay? And who's spitting on the sidewalk, who's crossing in the middle of the street, who is riding a bike on the sidewalk in the city of New York, by the way, illegal. Climbing a tree in the city of New York, by the way, illegal. Being in a park at your age, illegal. Certain parks in the city of New York. Throwing your garbage on the ground, illegal. So imagine yourself as a police officer walking down the street in the city of New York. You couldn't possibly go, you, right? You're going to use your discretion to arrest people based upon what you think is a real crime, right? Again, we in the classroom said taking the $2 from the soda machine, not so much a crime. Taking $2 from her, what's your name? Vanessa. Taking $2 from Vanessa, I'm a thief, right? Now, imagine yourself as a police officer. Would you arrest Kathy for taking the $2 from the Diet Coke people? Or would you maybe arrest Kathy from taking the $2 from Vanessa? You do it, so you'd arrest me for both, right? Yeah. You're harsh. Some days you're driving down the road, for those of you who drive, or at least sit in the passenger seat of the car. Some days you're driving down the road faster than you should be, and you don't get a ticket. Some days you're driving down the road fast, and you do get a ticket. It depends. It depends on discretion. So police officers have discretion as to who they can arrest in large part. I mean, obviously, if their boss is sitting there and says you have to arrest this person, that person, and this person, they have to do what their boss says. But for the most part, it's discretion. Now, what is police brutality? Yes?
Abusing their power.
And abusing their discretion. Remember, police have to act inside of the law, all right? What's the supreme law of the land in this country? Come on, think of it. Thank you. You were paying attention in history. United States Constitution is the supreme law of the land. And what are the first 10 amendments to the U.S. Constitution called? The Bill of Rights. And in those Bill of Rights are very important rights for United States citizens. And when you're talking about criminal justice situation, the Fourth, the Fifth, and the Sixth Amendment are really relevant. The Fourth Amendment is due process, okay? Due process. How many people here work? Anybody have a part-time job? Okay, what do you do?
I'm a lifeguard and I teach swimming lessons.
Okay, so when you're teaching somebody a swim lesson, is there a procedure you're supposed to follow? I mean, you just don't say to the person, here, get in the pool, figure it out, go in the deep end, right? There's a procedure you have to follow. Who else had their hand up? You had your hand up. What do you do?
I work as my bathroom girl.
Do you work on the cashier? So there's a procedure you have to follow when people come through, right? Police officers have to follow those very similar procedures, but those procedures are dictated by the Fourth Amendment of the United States Constitution. And what happens sometimes is police officers use their discretion, violate the Constitution, and as a result, things happen. Now, I spoke to your teacher regarding an article that was in the New York Times that I believe she spoke to you about disparities in the criminal justice system. How many people do you think are incarcerated in our country every year?
200,000.
Not even close.
5 million. 5 million.
I don't know about 5 million, but I think around 2 million people being incarcerated in our country. Now, in our country, we're America. We think we're the best, right? The amount of people that we have incarcerated in our country compared to other developed nations, we're number one. Of those people who are incarcerated, what do you think the demographics are? Do you think they're mostly men or mostly women? Men, correct. What do you think the ethnicity of most of the men are who are incarcerated? Exactly, young men of color. If you are a young man of color in this country, and what I mean between the ages of 18 and 25, you have a 1 in 5 shot or chance of being incarcerated. How did that happen? How did that happen? Almost 70% of the people incarcerated in our country are young men of color. And when you think about that in terms of the New York Times article that I hope you guys all looked at, called The Missing People in This Country, I mean, that's crazy. That's crazy. Now, do we think as a class that young men of color commit more crime than everybody else?
No.
I mean, do men and women commit different crimes?
Yeah.
Yes. They most certainly do. What's the difference between the crimes, generally speaking, that women commit versus the crimes that men commit? Anybody have any ideas?
Can I guess?
Hmm?
Can I guess?
Sure.
Like, stealing crazy.
There are so many comments I can make about that, but stealing something from Victoria's Secret. So let's back that up a little bit. That's a very specific example. Can you back out of that a little bit? What does it take? What does it take for somebody to go into a store and successfully remove merchandise and get away with it? What does it take? Secrecy. What else does it take? Not on the part of the other person, on the part of the person committing the crime. It takes secrecy. What else? You don't think it's a little nervy for somebody to go in and grab, the thing off the hook and take it, put it in their bag and walk away? That's a little nervy, right? What else? Do you wake up in the morning and say, today I'm gonna knock over Victoria's Secret? Doesn't it take planning? Women are planners. Women do things that take thought, plan, purpose. But you're right, most shoplifting, most theft from stores is done by women. It takes secrecy, planning, thought. Even if it's a spur of the moment thing, even if you didn't wake up that morning and say, today I'm going to hit up Victoria's Secret, and you're in the store and you say, oh my goodness, I need to have this. It still takes planning and thought and secrecy. Men, for the most part, don't do crime, statistically speaking, that way. What type of crimes do men, statistically speaking, do? Anybody over here? Not necessarily drugs. Okay, but you guys are being very specific. Back that up. Rape and assault. What kind of crime is that? Violent crime. Men, statistically speaking, commit violent crime, and women, statistically speaking, commit financial crime. Okay? And granted, there's exceptions to every single rule. Exceptions to every single rule on that. You know, you get women who are crazy violent. You've seen those fights on YouTube about the girls in high school. All right, you know, you don't want to get in the middle of that. But, you know, and you see people who have stolen white-collar crime, stock market crime, stolen millions of dollars. Bernard Madoff, who I hope maybe you guys have heard of, millions and millions and millions of dollars. That was a guy. And that took a lot of planning and a lot of stuff. So there are exceptions, but for the most part, men commit violent crime and women commit more financial crime, okay? But still, going back to the original premise, do you think that African-American males commit more crime than anybody else? I mean, they're incarcerated at almost the rate of 70%. 70% young men of color. Why is that? So let's take that from discretion. Do you think police officers specifically target young men of color? I can't hear you. Perhaps people have from their experience they hate young men of color. Well, let me show you an interesting statistic, okay? Of police officers, who do you think arrests young men of color more? White cops or black cops? Black cops. Black cops arrest more young men of color than white cops. That's what the statistics show, and I mean at an alarming rate. Why do you think that is? But when we're talking about abuse of discretion, and when police abuse their power and engage in forms of violence against somebody in their custody, statistically speaking, it's usually white officers as opposed to black officers. Sometimes black officers are involved. But when you are a police officer, you are supposed to follow a procedure as dictated by the Fourth Amendment on how you approach somebody, how you stop somebody, how you question somebody, how you arrest somebody, and all of these procedures have to be followed. What happens when those procedures are not followed? Anybody know? Or let me rephrase it. What's supposed to happen when all of those procedures? How do they get in trouble?
Don't they get fired?
No, they don't get fired.
Well, like that's
Who wants to be the criminal defendant? Who wants to be the criminal? Somebody wants to be the criminal. Let Miss Rappaport be the criminal. All right. So
Gio wants to be the
who
criminal.
wants to be Gio? Okay, so Gio, you're the criminal.
Gio.
Right, 'cause I don't get into
You're the criminal. Okay, Gio, sorry. So you're the criminal, and I'm a police officer, and I arrest you, and I don't follow proper procedure. What's supposed to happen to you? Are you supposed to be, you're supposed to be let go, right? Because if I, as a police officer, did not follow the proper procedure, you are supposed to be let go. I violated your constitutional rights, and under the law, you're supposed to be let go. Even if you did it. Whatever it was that you did. Even if you did it. Well, I was late, so I really can't say much. All right, so that's what's supposed to happen. They don't lose their jobs. The accused, the criminal defendant, is supposed to be set free. Okay? What do you think happens in reality a lot of times? They don't get set free. Well, have you ever heard the media talk about, oh, that so-and-so got let go on a technicality? Those criminal defense attorneys, look at what they do because, you know, this person was released on a technicality. Have you ever heard that? technicality, it means that somebody didn't do their job. Police officer didn't follow their process properly. So that's what happens. You're supposed to, under the law, be let go. And a lot of times, police officers don't follow the proper process. And why do you think that is? Perhaps they don't care, yes. Caught up in the moment. Anybody else have any other ideas?
Yeah, they think they have power.
Perhaps it's a power trip. Yes.
Poor training.
Poor training. Yes.
Their word over the criminal, accused criminal.
What about the accused criminal?
The police's word over the accused person.
Right? Anybody want to take a position from the police point of view? Yes.
Sometimes when being difficult and it's hard, so in a moment of battle, you should follow it.
Yes, sometimes, yes. Somebody over here had a hand up. Okay. Well, let's try and take it from the cop's perspective for a second here, okay? You're a police officer. Is that a highly stressful job or a low stress job? Why is it a highly stressful job? I mean, when you go to Bed Bath & Beyond, do you expect somebody to shoot you? When you go to the pool, do you expect somebody to shoot you? When you're a cop, is it realistic that somebody's going to shoot you while you're at work? It's a very high stress job. And as a result of that, again, we're talking statistics. Statistically speaking, police officers have a high rate of alcoholism, high rate of prescription drug use and abuse. And you know, you're going to work and you're always thinking that, you know, somebody could kill me today. So now you have a criminal defendant who you believe in your heart to the bottom of your being committed a crime. Sometimes don't people take the easy way out? Like, for example, did they have a writing assignment prior to this?
They're all working on their research papers that like deal with the overall topic.
All right, but how about prior to that?
We did other things prior to that. Like this is very specific to this project.
But I'm just talking about generally speaking.
Yeah.
Have you ever had a paper in any of your classes here that you had a topic and it was assigned and it was due a week from Thursday, for example, right? You guys had papers before.
Yeah.
Okay.
That kind of stuff, yeah.
Some people start their papers right away, correct? Some people like to procrastinate, and Wednesday night, 3 o'clock in the morning, or shall I say early Thursday morning, you're typing away because your paper is due on Thursday, correct? And some people do things all the way in between. Well, the same thing holds true for police officers. Some police officers follow every single procedure. Some police officers start off following every procedure. Some police officers have the mentality where they don't follow the proper procedure and they just keep abusing their discretion over and over and over and over and over again. And it's a product of all of the things you guys have talked about. Bad training, how they were brought up, their prejudices, their preconceptions about, you know, how crime is. By being surrounded by crime all the time. So it's definitely not an easy job. But why do you think we're seeing so many very public instances of police officers abusing their discretion, i.e., or abusing their discretion in the way in that they are physically assaulting criminal defendants? Why do you think we've seen so many of these, whether it's by shooting them or beating them up or something? Why do you think we're seeing so many of them now? Yes?
I feel like it's always been happening. People are just starting to record it nowadays.
So technology, right? Technology. Do you think that this is a new phenomenon that police officers are abusing their discretion in the way, or some police officers abuse their discretion in the way they deal with criminal defendants? No. Do you think that perhaps it's just coming to the forefront now because of technology and social media? Do you know that as a citizen of the United States, you have the absolute right to photograph what the police are doing? Everybody in this class aware of that right under the United States Constitution? You can't get involved in the arrest and you have to stand back. But if a police officer tries to take away your recording device or your phone, they're not allowed to do that. Do they still do it sometimes? Absolutely. Did you hear the case about the United States Marshal who took away a woman's phone, like got up in her face, but somebody else across the street was recording it too? And he took her phone and he threw it down? That marshal has now been punished, but he didn't lose his job. So you have an absolute right to record what the police are doing, and that's what's happening. People are recording more and more things, and people have to remember, not just police officers, everybody. Your generation lives your life on camera. Not just social media camera and the stuff that you guys choose to depict out there, or your friends choose to show of you on stuff, but how about just walking down the street every day? There's video cameras everywhere. And how many people in here have a phone? Anybody here have an old-fashioned flip phone, or are you guys all up on, smartphones and technology? Nobody here has an old-fashioned phone, right? Do you know that you can be tracked 24 hours a day, 7 days a week by your phone? Everything is on camera now. So I personally don't think that there's been an increase of the abuse of discretion from some officers, but I think that it's come to the forefront because of technology and because of social media. It spreads like that if somebody puts it on Facebook or Instagram or they tweet about it, right? Like that it spreads.
Do you guys have, because we have about 10 minutes left, do you guys have specific questions pertaining to your research papers? And some of them have like sort of different topics, but they thought you could weigh in on it.
Okay. Yes.
Do you think it's due to discretion that if the media covers more white policemen, targeted African American young, why don't we hear as much about African American policemen attacking or targeting African Americans?
Because the media in our country is not an independent organization anymore. When I was a child, the media was independent. It wasn't owned by these huge corporations. The media shows only what it wants to show. Think about that John Mayer line in one of his songs. When they own the information, they can bend it all they want. Every single news station in our country is owned by a large corporation. Okay? Who's the president of the United States? Barack Obama. President Obama gave a speech last year about immigration. This is the president of the United States. Whether you like him, you hate him, he's the president of the United States. Do you know that none of the major networks carried his speech because they disagreed with his message about immigration? So if you are a citizen of this country, you had to work to hear what the president of your country was saying, because NBC didn't carry it, Fox didn't carry it, ABC didn't carry it, CBS didn't carry it. The news, the media is not neutral anymore, which is why something like Twitter and the online media, online news organizations are becoming so popular and gaining so much traction. There's an online thing called The Gothamist, but even they have a spin on what is going on. You don't get anybody just reporting the facts anymore. Any other questions from anybody? Yes.
Writing about cults, would you say it's kind of hard to protect people in compounds?
You're writing about what? Oh, okay. You have to be careful because there are certain procedures, again, that have to be followed. You're not supposed to violate somebody's rights, but if somebody doesn't want your help, it's very difficult to give it to them. that sort of relates to domestic violence issues, because if you're a cop and you go into a cult to try and save somebody who doesn't want to be saved, think about the violence that happens in a domestic violence situation. If you were a police officer, that would be your least favorite call ever, because you roll up on something. Let's say you two are married and you're both beating the crap out of each other. Police officer comes in, breaks them up, he fights the cop. Normally what happens is, or pulls you apart, and he starts screaming, "Don't touch my wife!" And now he's attacking the cop. Another bad call for police officers are junkies. Certain people who are like meth people. When you take meth, if you're a meth addict, you lose your dopamine, so you lose your ability to feel pleasure and pain. So if you're a police officer and you're trying to arrest a meth head who feels no pain, who's fighting back, you have to use a lot of force, right? Somebody may not understand that on social media, but so to deal with somebody in a cult is very, very tricky business, because you're trying to get somebody or protect somebody who doesn't want your help. Yes?
Do you believe police brutality can stop?
I think it's going to take a very long time for police brutality to come to an end. I think it involves, personally speaking, I think it involves a lot more than race. It also involves money. There's a very, very interesting TED Talk. Do you guys know what TED Talks are? Very interesting TED Talk, and I can't remember the guy's name who gave it. Very prominent professor at Harvard University, African-American guy, who basically said that the reason for so many young men of color being arrested and incarcerated stems from the civil rights laws. That it's a continuation of Jim Crow, it's a continuation of separate but equal. We believe now that there is no such thing as separate and equal. Everybody is to be treated the same under the law. So we have to treat them the same under the law, but the law doesn't have to apply the same to them. And I think it's going to take generations of people who are colorblind, plus more income inequality, in order for police brutality to end. Any other questions? One more?
Yeah. Do you believe in other methods other than like tasing or excessive force? Or shooting?
Look, the police officer has an absolute right to protect himself and to protect somebody else. If it's you or me, it's going to be you. I'm going to protect myself as a cop or as anybody else. If it's really you and me, it's going to be you. So you have an absolute right to protect yourself as a police officer. You have an absolute right to protect the citizens as a police officer. The question is, when, under your discretion, was it reasonable to use that force? Like if you're coming at me with a knife, okay? Let's use her. She's coming at me with a knife, and I'm a cop, and I'm lying on the ground, and she's standing over me with a knife, and I shoot her with my service revolver, or my service weapon. Is anybody going to say that I abused my discretion? I'm laying on the ground, she's over me like, the lady from Psycho with the knife, and I shoot her. Probably not. You're right. You might get some people like, oh, I should have got, whatever, but you're right, probably not. But if your back is turned, if you're unarmed, if you are running away, it's very difficult for people to get their mind around how that's an appropriate use of force in that particular situation. You're only supposed to use force when it's you or them. Or if I'm protecting, somebody has a gun and I shoot the person. It's my job to protect the citizens. But, again, if somebody's running away, somebody's on the ground, somebody's beaten up in the back of a police van, so much so that their spine is severed in half. All of those things, I think, as a society, we would agree, a little abuse of discretion there, right? Perhaps a substantial abuse of discretion. Somebody's dead. Any other questions? Well, thank you guys for allowing me to come in and chat with you. I hope it was helpful. Good luck with your papers. And just remember, there are no easy answers. And unfortunately, you guys are going to have to deal with it when you get to be our age. As long a way as that is.
Thanks, I think.
Stop.